Hello, everyone. Maayong adlaw uban. This is Cheryl Sampson Ramirez of the Pilipinx and Wellness Podcast. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month. For this month's episode, my co-host Sheena Katz and I will be talking with Dr. Marinette Asuncion-Uy, Filipino clinical psychologist that many of you also know on Instagram as the Brown Psych, based in Jacksonville, Florida. This episode's title is Mastering Healthy Boundaries for Filipinos. Now, when we think about our community, some of you are probably asking us, what do you mean boundaries? And this is why we are diving into this topic. How can healthy boundaries be applied with our family and loved ones? And why is it important when it comes to honoring our own wellness needs? Enjoy this and more with this episode. Maayong adlaw! Welcome to our second episode of Season 5 for the Pilipinx and Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Cheryl Sampson Ramirez, and my pronouns are she, her, sha. For this episode's audio description, currently I am wearing a white blouse with black polka dots. I have black hair with turquoise highlights. I am wearing silver headphones that hang over the ear. I have glasses with a wide frame, rose gold tints, and sparkles. And in my background, I have a black curtain. For this episode, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Sheena.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sheena Katz, and my pronouns are she and her. For my audio description, currently I'm wearing a black V-neck with some gray pants. My brown hair is down, and I'm seated in front of an impressionist painting behind me, and I'm streaming from Los Angeles, California.
Following our last episode, Allergies and Asthma, with Dr. Gina Dapul Hidalgo. This month, we are happy to invite to our podcast Dr. Marinette Asuncion-Uy, Doctor of Psychology, aka at the Brown Psych on Instagram, to talk to us about mastering healthy boundaries for Filipinos in line with Mental Health Awareness Month. As mentioned in previous episodes, all views discussed are for informational and educational purposes only. It's not meant to be medical advice, nor does it constitute therapy or professional advice. Always consult with your healthcare practitioner, especially before starting any exercise or new health program, or a qualified mental health professional for your particular condition. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome to our podcast Dr. Nette. Welcome.
Hello, Cheryl and Sheena. This is Dr. Nette or Marinette. I am coming to you from Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, and my pronouns are she, her, sha. I am currently wearing a black blouse too, just like Sheena and I talked earlier that we're going to be blacking it out today. And I'm also wearing black earrings, and I have like a green plant on my background, and you can also see my lampshade in the background. I am so happy to be here, Cheryl and Sheena. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, we're happy to have you.
Welcome. So this is Sheena, and we typically like to open our episodes by getting to know our guest and their origins. So to your knowledge, Dr. Nat, where are both sides of your family from in the Philippines?
Yeah, before I go there, I actually forgot. I always do this to just kind of like honor our ancestors from our homeland, but also I am in the Seminole and Timucuan territory here where I am in Florida, and I am honored to be blessed by the fruits and labor of the ancestors in here. But as far as my family, my mom, I think, is from Marinduque, like her whole lineage. I'm not sure. Good conversation to have in our next phone call because they still live there. But my dad's family is from Bulacan. He actually has his lineage. You guys probably don't know this, but his ancestors are the owners of the Halili Transit. It's like a railway kind of like transportation, I guess. But yeah, his family is from Bulacan, the Asuncions.
Very cool. Some of my dad's family side is also from Bulacan, so we'll have to chat about that later. And Dr. Nat, we'd love to know more about the why behind your decision to pursue a career in psychology. What sort of events in your life led you to your personal path in pursuing this passion?
Yeah, I've always kind of been, like you have a counselor in your family, like like you'll have a friend who's like just so good in listening. I was that kid growing up. I didn't listen to it though. Like when I went to college, I just like took a course, which is so far from my course. And I studied all the way from elementary to college in the Philippines. And then I went to San Francisco for my grad studies. But um, it was like really my own personal journey. I grew up like with anxiety and my own personal traumas, and come to find out like in grad school, the things that I'm going to mention today are no disrespect whatsoever to my parents. Like I love them. I know that they also had their own struggles, hardships, and whenever I kind of like even share in social media, I am very aware that they read, and I know that they can be sensitive at times, but this is in no disrespect what I'm about to say in this podcast to them, because I really have a lot of respect and love for them. But it's also like how their own trauma kind of like, you know, getting into how they raised me and how I saw their interactions between each other. And the way I was raised, so a lot of like my own personal traumas is like really what led me. But because, in the Philippines, you don't go into psychology. Like there's no, what I mean, counselor, you want to be a counselor? Like there's no such thing, right? So I went into a completely different field. And then Cheryl and Sheena, you won't believe this, but I went to banking. I went into selling real estate. I was all over the place. I I tried like a lot of like different things. And then when I came to the States, I even went to farmers insurance. I was an underwriter. That was my first job in America in 2020. When was that? 2011. That was like one of my first jobs. And then I went to retail. Actually, I went to retail first, and then I went to insurance. And then I volunteered for a domestic violence shelter. And then I was, I said that, oh my gosh, like, I saw how like the counselors were doing the work, like with all this amazing women at the shelter. And that's what led me to ask. So we used to live across a community college, and there was a Filipina like counselor there at that college. And I asked her, I said,
Yeah.
I go into the field. But to be honest with you, even before that, I already had an inkling that I have to be in the mental health field, because before I left for the US, I already told my parents that I'm going to pursue a master's in counseling in the Philippines. And they were all going to pay for it too. So they were actually very supportive of it. So that was like my journey to this field. Yeah.
Wow, you're like a balance between my world and Sheena's world with your sales, right? And experience, and then also I'm within the realm of mental health. So I'm glad that we're both here on this episode with you. Now, this is Cheryl coming back in for those of you that are listening. And now, okay, let's talk about psychology and the field of mental health, because traditionally we're not encouraged to pursue this route, right? When we look at our community, they're like, I want you to be a doctor or an engineer, right? Or a nurse. And when you come out and tell them, I want to be a counselor or a therapist, they're like, why? You want to work with all those crazies, So, right, that's kind of the response. So I'm just curious, when you actually told your parents or your family members that you were going to pursue this doctorate in psychology and just go on this path, what kind of responses did you receive?
Yeah. And that was actually in 2024 when I started, I think, my journey. I took a while in grad school, because like that's when I also had my baby in grad school. People are like, how did you do that? But anyway, so I had an extended kind of grad school vacation, not vacation, but like grad school stint. But when I first told my parents actually, to be honest with you, are very supportive. I think like if I wanted to be a clown in the circus, they'll be supportive. Like they're just, they're amazing in so many ways. Despite like all of, because they married young and all that stuff. But anyway, um so I told them, and they're like, yeah, that's amazing. They kind of had a hint because I told you they were even gonna pay for like my master's in the Philippines before I went in here. So, but when I told my uncle, who's a doctor who I love and also respect, like my uncle like helped our family, like the whole family. He's kind of like the one that's kind of like helping the cousins because they're all going to college, and he would send money to kind of like help out like the whole entire clan, Cheryl and Sheena. I'm not kidding. So again, this is no disrespect to my uncle, but because of like, colonial mentality, and it's not in our culture, this was his words when I told him that I wanted to be a psychologist. He's like, oh, why not just like be a nurse or a real doctor?
Mm.
Mhm. But
how did you take that in?
yeah, but to be honest with you, like we had because we see him like during Thanksgiving. I think it was a couple of years ago when we were at a Thanksgiving. As our older Filipino generation also realize, like the value of mental wellness, especially I think after the pandemic, right? Like that's really when the mental health people became stars. Like when our that's when we were highlighted in the media. Um, I heard him actually bragging to like one of the uncles there, saying that, "Hey, did you know that Marinette is like this, and like this is what she's doing?" And I think he mentioned like I wasn't big in social media at that time, but I was kind of like putting some stuff out there. But he was kind of bragging about me, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of cool to hear that coming from him, and how also his own kind of evolution, right? And to understanding how helpful it is to have mental health people in the world." So I was also
Yeah.
called my counselor, but by another relative. But anyway, she's like, oh,
You
that's
were
just
also, I'm sorry?
someone also called me a glorified counselor. But then again, that other relative too also now has like kind of like, I know that he respects me now too. So it's a complete turnaround with our relatives, right?
And that's so interesting. Those are like the tendencies. Sometimes I feel like our community will be quick to maybe unintentionally or intentionally draw shame or judgment. And then once you reap success or benefit from what you're doing, then all of a sudden they're bragging about you. It's interesting. That's another thing to maybe unpack sometime
Yeah.
in like your future reels and episodes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? So now, in your bio, you shared with us that you talk about administering culturally informed therapy, teaching boundaries, and decolonizing mental health, right? We've learned from past guests and also being within the realm of health and wellness for our community that there's been research done in Filipino or Pilipinx psychology by academics such as Dr. Nadal or Dr. E.J. David here in the US, or what our indigenous people refer to as Turtle Island. And then we're even starting to see like work come from Carl Lorenz Cervantes in the Philippines. I'm I'm curious to know, do you draw your strategies and approaches from their work, or are there other academics or providers within the field that contribute to your foci around these areas?
Yeah. I have a long-winded, sorry, Cheryl. I'm also long-winded, like you mentioned.
No, no
Because when
apologies. This platform is
yeah,
for us to learn more about you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I actually like was in grad school, so this is my long-winded answer. If you don't like the short answer, I wanted to write on like bicultural, kind of like how do you balance raising a kid, right? Because like I told you in grad school, I got pregnant. Like that's when I had my beautiful baby, who's now, by the way, in college. Can you believe it? Like my God, it's like yeah. Anyway, um, she's amazing, but what do you call this? I wanted to write on how to kind of like raise a kid like the bicultural way, because like when I first came to America, I was hearing so many like like behind the scenes in the party, like someone would tell you that, oh, by the way, yeah, my relationship with my dad is not even that good either because of this. He wants to kind of like raise me like this, but I'm here in America. And like there's always like this push and pull and tie, like even my own husband, right? Like he grew up here, but like his parents wants to raise him a different kind of way. And so I was like, wow, like this is really a big, and every party that I would go to, I would be kind of like pushed on the side, not pushed on the side, but kind of like, they'd kind of like whisper in my ear that, and especially when they know that I'm in psychology, right? Like I'm studying psychology and all that stuff. And I said that this is a great dissertation. But unfortunately, Cheryl and Sheena, at that time, I just kind of came to America. And every single time I would read Dr. Kevin Nadal's kind of like article about like Filipino, like, or for instance, about like being raised by cultural or like colonial mentality and like the history of the Philippines and how we came to be and why we're acting, feeling, thinking like this. You know what happens after I read an
What?
article? I cry. I cry. It's so painful. It's just so painful. And so like my dissertation chair at that time, she goes to me, Marinette, this is too close to home. And I think like in her own words, she was saying that you're still acculturating to a new culture, to the United States. You're missing your family. I was my family a lot. I couldn't go home in the first few years because I was in grad school. I didn't see my family for such a long time. So it was so painful to do it. And now what I'm doing in my social media, this is kind of like the extension of like my dissertation work, even though I didn't end up right on Filipino culture or bicultural stuff, in my dissertation. It was a completely different topic because I had to finish grad school. But then after now, like I'm kind of like now stable in my private practice. I'm like, I'm going to continue on the work that I wanted to do for so many years. Took me so many years. I don't know if I answered your question. I think your question was like, who were like your kind of like inspiration, right? So I mean, like Dr. Nadal's
Yes.
David, but Dr. Lenny Strobel, holy cow! When I read her work,
Oh yeah.
holy smokes! I was like, there's so many things that I couldn't say. That when she said it, I'm like, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
They just had the Babaylan conference,
I see.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I
part
also
of
follow
that.
Yeah, I also follow like a lot of like the Black, like liberation psychology people. Like there's Audre Lorde, right? There's the author of the Black Skin White Masks, Franz Fanon, and then Bell Hooks.
Fanon, yeah.
Yeah, Fanon, is that how you say it? Yeah.
Yes.
So a lot of like the Black liberation, like, and also indigenous psychologists. I read like some of their stuff. I'm like, okay, that's what it is. Because like like even though I studied in the San Francisco Bay Area, they didn't teach us indigenous psychology. It's all a bunch of like white kind of like theories, like,
Right, which is sad given that we live on their land, right? Yeah.
I mean, sure, like we have like they've like a multicultural studies, but that's it. Yeah. And one class to talk about like my culture for like maybe 30 minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Nette, I want to dive in deeper to like as you were talking, the question that kind of came up was what is it like coming here, immigrating here from the Philippines and having these cultural values being defined, because I feel like when you grow up in the Philippines, you're going through it day by day, you're existing in some of these forms of intergenerational trauma, right? And you mentioned earlier when you were talking about your origin story, so when you're coming here now, it's being defined in some of these academic articles that you're picking up and reading. So can you talk about like also, that or that global experience, right? Of coming from the Philippines, getting it defined for you, bringing up these emotions.
Yeah. Whew, it's the unlayering and unfurling of Marinette, right? Like in the
Yeah.
decades. But I and
Right.
when you were asking that question, you know where my mind took me is like when I go in front, like for instance, Filipino party, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
have a certain identity that's like very different from like my social media presence. Like I don't talk about decolonization in a karaoke party. I mean, we talk about like when we're gonna watch Trokoy next time, because like we watched this the first time. But I don't
Yeah.
go into the deep stuff because it is painful.
Right.
And when I go
Mm-hmm.
there, you can see the eyes of the people.
Mm.
You can see them kind of
Mm.
like churning on their seats or something.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends don't, I mean, like aside from my close friends from the Philippines, but like my friends here, yeah, I think some of them follow, but like a lot of them, like they don't know that I have a different entity. Dr. Ned, Brown Psych, like what like what is that? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just it's really difficult, to unravel, like you mentioned, as a practitioner within the mental health realm. But not only that, a lot of the work that we're putting out there, yourself on social media, we're also doing that work together. Um, it's really kind of bringing out a rawness within the diaspora or exposing our community to a lot of things that maybe we've all experienced but have not been able to address head on. So I was really excited to bring you on because similarly, you're helping to do the work that we're also addressing on the podcast. But even so, like that lands differently wherever you are at, like globally, and even whether you're here, like in a country outside of the homeland, or even when you're within the homeland. So I was just kind of curious. I wanted to ask you about how that was for you.
Yeah. Have you guys read the work of, I'm sure you guys read the work of Carlos Bulosan?
Yes, I
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
How was that for you, Cheryl? Because I was like, holy
Oh, that's
smoke,
so
like
emotional for
tears.
me.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like every time I would, and some parts of it, I read it in the book, and then I'm a big Audible girl. And
Mm-hmm,
some parts
mm-hmm.
of it, even when I'm doing my makeup, right? Like that's when I listen to the Audible on the side, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that to our ancestors. And because it's like a bio, like it's the real, it's not a fiction. It's the real
Mm-hmm.
things that happened to him. So I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, so that's the one that he's one of my inspirations for the Brown Psych for
Mm.
bringing all of those different topics. Like that's
Mm.
the book.
And and
Hmm.
imagine that's just one person that was able to write and document
Yeah,
about the experience. Imagine all the other stories that
exactly.
we are not able to capture.
Hmm. Hmm. Nor
Yeah.
do they even want to go there? It's too painful, Cheryl. Like the work that we're doing, I think in one of my reels, I said that this is hard work. And I don't know, like if Dr. Lenny Strabel said, I think it was her. I listened to so many decolonization people, but
Yeah, no.
well, like someone's, or maybe it's Dr. Thema Bryant. I don't know if you guys are also familiar with Dr. Thema Bryant. She used to be
No.
I think she's not anymore, but she's the first Black APA, American Psychological Association president who's Black or female Black. Yeah. But she's the one who said that, like, I don't think that will, the decolonization work is like a lifetime. I mean, like, I wish that our children, will have it better than we do. I mean, like, that's kind of like the goal and why we're doing this work to make it better for them, really. But hopefully, we'll see some of the fruits of our labor too. So, yeah.
Maybe this is just the foundational work that we're launching for the rest of generations afterwards to continue and
Right.
follow and
Yeah.
build upon. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
I really think it is. There's a quote somewhere that says, we heal out loud, that way others don't have to suffer in silence. And that's exactly what you guys are doing. So this is Sheena coming back in. Dr. Net, thank you so much for sharing and just all the contributions that you've done for Filipino mental health. I know that we appreciate it, and I know that our community appreciates it. So we love that you're here.
Thank you. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm meant to be here. Like that's the calling that I can't ignore. I'm like, you have a calling and you have to answer because like before this work, I was all over the place. Like I was really lost. And then when I found this and I answered, I'm like, yep, I'm home. I can see why
Mm.
I've had that fire all along of being in the as a healer. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's a great transition as we dive into today's topic, which is mastering healthy boundaries for Filipinos. Wow,
Mm-hmm.
this is such an important and difficult topic for many of us. um, Dr. Net, I know we started to see you dive in a little bit deeper on this topic on your Instagram account around end of July, beginning of August, right? And, we'd love to get your thoughts on, why this is such an important topic for our community to discuss, right? And also to add on to that, how do we even begin to establish healthy boundaries in our family dynamics while coexisting with cultural values? For example, the idea of utang loob, right? How do you manage that?
Yeah. And really great question. So, I mean, like, first of all, I grew up, like, I don't know what boundaries, like, did you guys learn boundaries growing up? Like, I
No, there's
never,
no
Absolutely
boundaries.
not.
it's like, what, I mean, like, we probably do, but it's this, because there's different kinds, right? Like, I think that for
Mm.
most of us who grew up in the Filipino household, it's like really the poorest boundary. And then I mean, like, so understanding like my own journey and what like I needed growing up, this is kind of like one of them that I needed to understand. Because as I was like working, and I only started, to be honest with you, my private practice like during the pandemic. I was sharing with Cheryl that that's actually like what kind of started my private practice. I used to work for agencies and counties before this and other behavioral health companies, but um as I started working especially with our Filipino clients, and they come, right? Like it's kind of like clockwork. They come and it's like either an issue with a mom or an issue with a dad, the intergenerational trauma. And then my clients would be like, and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, and then I kind of like started to kind of like think that, sure, like I teach boundaries to my American clients, but it's totally different. It's like very frank, very straightforward, and this is my boundaries. And they were like, kind of like almost say it like word vomit that this is what's going to happen. This is my house and this is how you're going to act. And I was like, these lines that we're learning on this workbook, it's not going to fly in our
Yeah.
Filipino household.
Yep.
So how do we kind of merge? Because like there's still, I understand the value. I see it. I've seen it in my own life. I did it with my own mom, but I had to do it the Filipino way. And there is a happy medium to be able to do the healthy boundaries, but you're gonna have to like use a little bit of like the not a little bit, but full on Filipino style. Because the way the work, if you go to Amazon, right, like all the boundaries workbook, if you follow them, I'd say good luck. Okay, you're gonna do it with your Filipino hair. Good luck. Yeah,
Yeah. It's very
yeah,
linear.
it's very
The very
linear. Yeah, and the tone of voice, right? It's like, oh yeah, very direct.
I was gonna say that's so true because the very first time I went to therapy was, and she was lovely, but she was a white woman from the Midwest. So you can imagine when she told me, just set these boundaries with your mom. I'm like, yeah, okay, it's not that easy.
Mhm. Yeah,
So it's so great that you're here to kind of bridge that gap.
yeah. And the one thing that I also am astounded, right, when it comes to boundaries. So, and I share this like in the master class that it's for free if you guys wanted to kind of like see it. I think that's where I shared it. Or is it in the course? Anyway, about like, and this is something that she's really one of the people who inspired me to kind of like write this and kind of like understand that there's really a need for this. So she was so super depressed, this girl, lovely girl. Of course, she's a nurse. Mom's also, of course, a nurse too, right? All of us. But the mom, unfortunately, in this is like, and I was like, just kind of like, oh, maybe this is gonna work, like we'll try it or whatever. But the mom, unfortunately, is kind of like one of those moms who will comment on her physical features. Ang taba-taba mo. Do not sit with me beside the church if you're going to wear that. Like, super critical of her. And she was kind of like at her wit's end because she's actually the reason. Like, my mom is the reason I came to therapy. Like, I don't know how to deal with it and all that stuff. And then we talked about the boundaries. And I said, but if you do it this way, it's not going to work with mom. And I have to explain to her the different types of like pakikipagkapwa-tao, pakikiramdam, like all the different kind of core values. By the way, also, Virgilio Enriquez, whew, his work is like also like the inspiration for all of the different posts that we have. He's the father of Filipino psychology, right? Psikolohiyang Pilipino.
Okay.
And he talks about all that. And then there is this other person, his name is Prospero Covar. He's like the one who kind of awakened the kapwa to this kind of like jar where you have okay, Cheryl, talk about long-winded. Here we go. You have this jar.
No worries. Yeah.
You have this jar.
Dive in.
And because of the kapwa, right? Like our shared identity, like our like other people is in us and we're in them, the whole concept of the kapwa. I love his analogy because he talked about this jar where if you are kind of like on the outside of the jar, and this is a very simplistic view. Please look at the works of Prospero Covar for a more detailed explanation of this. If you're outside of the jar, you call it ibang tao, which means other people. Pero pag kilala mo na yung tao, the more you get closer to them, nasa loob ka na ng jar, you're inside the jar, you're now hindi ibang tao. So I had to explain to my Filipino clients that just imagine that, right? Like if you meet a friend and then you get to meet a friend because of the kapwa, right? Eventually, when you trust the kaibigan, the friend, you're gonna go inside that jar. Hindi ka na ibang tao. You're no longer other people. You're like one of us. You're I want to say inside me, but I know that. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like you're now a part of me. I said, imagine you're the kid. And the thing is, like, also I became a mom. It became so clear to me on why my parents are like that and why other parents are like that. Because now I know I'm not just like I understand the ideology or like the ideas of a second gen Filipino who grew up in America, but I also understand what it's like to be a first gen. I'm kind of like half. So I see both sides of the coin. So when my clients come to me and then they complain that their parents are like this and like this, I can explain to them that this is why. And I'm not minimizing your pain. I'm just saying that this is an explanation. It's not an excuse, right? For their behavior. And so, can you imagine kung anak ka, if you're their daughter, hindi ka ibang tao, you're not different from me. And so the word enmeshment, I want to dive deeper. Maybe that's like a study that I can call later on, or maybe you and Cheryl and I and Sheena can kind of like go that route of understanding what that is. But there's like enmeshment, like I've never like, does that exist? Kasi hindi ka ibang tao, you're not different from me. So that's why like the mom, when they say na ang taba mo, you shouldn't wear that, hindi ka kasi ibang tao eh. You're not different from me. So I don't treat you like another person. I don't have that filter sometimes, right? Yeah. So I don't know if that's the question, but.
So in a way, you're saying that the mom is not viewing it as a negative thing. It's like, this is what I would say to myself. So, but it doesn't minimize how it's received.
Right.
You know, earlier, Dr. Nette, I'm like breathing through all of this. I'm like, oh, wow. It's kind of touching different areas internally for me. So, you know, earlier when you were asking, you know, if there are any boundaries that we can identify that we grew up with, I actually thought of one. It's one of the boundaries I feel like in our families is whatever you do not bring shame to our family.
Yeah. Right.
I think that's one boundary, right? It's like our business is nobody else's business to know.
Yeah, don't air out.
That is definitely, I feel like, a strict boundary that like we have in our culture. I don't know, Sheena, were you able to think of like maybe what other boundaries? you were taught growing up?
That's
Yeah.
definitely one of them, which is you just kind of suffer in silence and you figure it out and you keep pushing forward. Let's see, another boundary. A boundary is, it's in the same idea of like you're the same person, right? Which is you drop everything for your parents. If they, you can be in the middle of a super important conference of your life's work, but if they call you and they need you to pick up something, you drop everything. Which
Yeah.
I get the idea of prioritizing your loved ones, but it doesn't leave any room for, well, what about prioritizing myself and
Yeah.
my needs? So there's a
Right.
disconnect there. So that's one thing that I found, which is absolutely, I want to do whatever I can to help you, but also there's a separate life here, you know? So to drop everything, that's one boundary I think that I'm still struggling with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of like flows a little bit, right? Like when you talk about the seesaw, it's really difficult, especially for bicultural, third culture kids, to get that because the way a lot of like Filipinos in the homeland were raised is to kind of follow the elders, right? Like to kind of follow the parents, honor your parents and all that stuff. Because even like the only time like we really separate from our parents if you're brought up in the homeland is like when you get married. Sometimes when you get married, you still live in the same household because of like finances, resources, and all that stuff. So it's really, really difficult to kind of separate. But Sheena, like to your point, it's like you were almost kind of raised to please other people because of that group harmony. And that's when I kind of like, as a mental health professional, like I have that line that like, sure, like, of course, like the reason, to be honest with you, like when I think of my success, like I just don't think of it as my success. Whenever I think of like, I don't know, winning a $10 million lotto ticket, you know what first comes to my mind? I'm going to bring my parents to Europe. I'm going to do a world tour. It's never it's going to make me tear up. It's never just about us.
Yeah.
Never.
And I think that's kind of like always the friction, like when I have Filipino American clients in my practice, right? That they have, it's built in us to care for our family, like to care for our parents, except for the super, super abusive one. I always put a disclaimer.
Yeah,
Of
of
course, the
course.
boundary
Yeah.
on that. That's when you put your rigid boundary when you're being exploited. Like I've had clients who were like, obviously like physically abused, sexually abused. Like, of course, like, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm just talking about like the typical kind of discord of like utang na loob and yeah
Mhm.
and all that stuff. So yeah.
But to your point, Dr. Ned, that's also why Filipinos make excellent nurses. Because what
Mhm.
you just landed on was like, it's never just about us. It's always about our love language and our service to others. Because when it becomes about us, it's like, oh, then the judgment comes in, right? You're being selfish. You're not thinking about, everybody else,
Yeah.
It's, and in a way, it's kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, just a different side of the coin. In a way, when we were talking about boundaries, right, in the US, it could be very black and white, like you either cut them off or you're interacting with them. But this is a different form of like black and white where it's like you're either all about your family or you're
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in our paradigm, right?
Right. Yeah, that's why when I teach the boundaries, Sheena and Cheryl, like I always say that this is not, and a lot of us, right, like will feel, oh, is that disrespectful? That's almost like an ultimatum if I put a boundary,
Yeah.
or that's like,
Yeah.
they're gonna call me walang utang na loob, or walang hiya ka, kasi hindi, we brought you up here and we had all the
Yeah.
sacrifices, hindi ka nahihiya, like whatever. So
Yeah.
that's what I kind of always have to and I teach about the cognitive distortions, right? That's our cognitive distortions when it comes to boundaries as Filipinos, is we think that it is the disrespect, ultimatum. But if you think of like the boundary, really just, especially healthy boundaries, because there's three different kinds. There's the porous, there's the rigid, which a lot of like Filipino Americans who are fed up with their parents, like, I'm just going to put a rigid boundary, which is like a wall. But the one that I teach is not those two. I teach the healthy boundary kind. Like these are the Filipinos who still want to have a relationship with their parents, but at the same time also honor their limitations because we're human. Honor our needs, honor what we can give, right? And also at the same time, keep a little bit to ourselves because like we're not going to be able to function if we're all about the others. And to be honest with you, if you decolonize the core values, like especially utang na loob, that is really what it's about. It's like you give if you can. It's not like about kasi 'di ba merong there's a notion na utang na loob is like you have to repay. But if you decolonize all our core values, and this has been twisted by the colonizers, by the imperial people, right? To kind of think that you have to
Yes.
pay us back because we gave you education, infrastructure. But if you really decolonize the root, it's not that it's like you honor yourself and then you also honor your parents. And then there's a healthy medium. And if you really want to kind of ask me, like if you were to sum up what healthy boundaries is, it's just really communication. You just communicate your needs and you empathize with where they're coming from, right? Like you understand. That's kind of like one of the strategies. It's like, Mom, I hear you saying that you miss me and you want to spend time with me. But on Saturday, my husband and I are gonna go to the park because we're meeting some friends. Would it be okay if we go there on Sunday instead of like, Mom, I told you on Saturday we're gonna meet with our friends. How come you don't get it? Why can't you just like listen to me? That's how like my American clients when they're first thing to me would react. I said, can I hear how you do the boundary? And then that's their go-to. It's like super rigid. But that's not what
Mm-hmm.
I teach. Kind of like the empathy and kind of like understanding where they're coming from. And Mom, I know you're feeling sad because I know you really missed me and I miss you too. But is it okay? Like maybe we'll go like next Saturday or Sunday and then we'll meet. It's just really healthy communication. That's it. That's what healthy boundaries is. And you don't even have to say, Mom, this is my boundary, because that's a big trigger for a lot of
Yeah.
yeah.
That's so interesting too, like the duality of the whole idea, because on one hand, we're literally brought up to be of service to our parents, ancestors, or whatever. But at the same time, utang na loob is the complete opposite of being of service, because then now you're taking stuff back. So it's just so, but you try to navigate both sides. I mean, is there a time frame when we can finally figure that out? Just kidding.
I think that's why we're doing the work, right, Cheryl? Like
Right.
all
Yeah.
I get that notion that like we have been, I mean, like, boy, 300 plus years. Like, how do we do that in our lifetime? Like, I mean, we're trying. We're here to kind of dismantle all of the notions that were ingrained in us too. Yeah, but
Yeah, no, more things are coming as you were speaking, Dr. Net. So like
yeah.
even the way that you just said someone exerts their boundaries, like, and the way maybe our community exerts our boundaries, it reminds me of how kind of interestingly graceful we are as well. Like, for example, like when the stereotype is that Filipinos are good dancers or good singers, but right, even in our dance, like in the movement, the grace comes out. And similarly in our delivery, the grace gets exuded, right? In how we deliver. It's also like kind of hand in hand. So I kind of made that analogy as you were sharing about exerting boundaries. But I also wanted to ask you, so there is the exertion of boundaries in our communities, but then there's also the non-boundaries, I feel, that might be all tied to sometimes class in the Philippines. I'm going to give you a concrete example of that. So my mom grew up very poor in comparison to my dad. Actually, both of my parents are from the province, in the countryside, right? And growing up, some of the things where I saw there were like not boundaries was around things like, and this might sound funny to some, but was my reality, and sometimes I felt shame from it. So, for example, we would go to like the department store, right? And she would always try to ask at the department store for the discount, or would return something to the department store, right? And it's like, Mom, you can't do that at the department stores. Like, there are rules and boundaries around what you buy, right? And so sometimes we grew up even like hiding behind the clothing racks when she would try to like talk to ask for the discount or to get a cheaper deal on the item that she bought or wants to return it, right? Or there were other times actually recently when my dad was getting close to his transition. And I don't know if the boundaries just kind of fall off through age, where we would see her in the hospital rooms, like taking medical supplies from the hospital rooms. And we're like, what are you doing? Like, this is not like a handout, or like, this is like not things that you just get for free. And there were like absolutely no boundaries, in those settings. But it also made me feel really sad because I also realized that this was her physical action and manifestation of the poverty that she must have grown up to, where now that she's living in a cultural or a country where there are things that are abundant, where she grew up in a setting where there were things that were rationed, I'm seeing like even those manifestations of boundaries getting communicated. So, I mean, that's the flip side, right? Is like there are boundaries that we experience growing up, and then in other scenarios or situations, there are no boundaries at all.
Right.
Have you ever like thought about like how, talking about maybe if you have any insight around that?
Yeah. Cheryl, I thought you were going to say that the ketchup from Jollibee or McDonald's that they hoard.
Oh, no, that too. The ketchup packets, the amount of napkins. Every family party, let's bring out the El Pollo Loco utensils and the
napkins.
plates. Yeah, no, right? And so those are the times where we're not seeing the boundaries, but then maybe it's not translating, into this country, right? Or these cultures.
Yeah. So my question for you, Cheryl, is like, where did mom bring all those stuff? She probably gave it to you, right? Or to family members.
Sometimes it was in my baon when she packed lunch for me.
Exactly.
Right? Or, in the family parties, why are you going to spend money on napkins and on plates at Costco? We can just get it when we eat out, right? Or, don't buy trash bags. We'll just recycle the shopping bags, right?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you kind of like look at it though, too, it's like, I wonder if like the other side of that too is like, even if like I know that you're an adult, like we're adults, it's still kind of like their way of like, oh, like when my in-laws would vacation here, they would kind of like grab napkins and like, oh, huwag ka nang bumili sa Costco, don't buy because we have napkins. Like we got it from Jollibee or something. I wonder if that's also an extension to kind of like extend also their help, even though like we're adults. Does that make sense? Like, even though they're kind of like doing it the non-boundary way, but like at the end of the day, it's again like all about, I mean, like, yeah, there's the lack mindset, unfortunately, because of how, the resources are when we were growing up in the Philippines. But at the same time, I always kind of fall back into kind of like, is that related to the Kapwa again? To kind of taking care of family, the group harmony again. That's kind of like how I would view things. So sometimes like when I would look at the comments on like the Instagram post, right? I know that like, and I'm not minimizing like the pain and all that stuff, but like when you really kind of, and of course I have this, we have the psychologist kind of like, or the mental health kind of perspective of it. Like we have to look at the whole picture and the context and all that stuff. That's kind of like where my mind goes to. Like at the end of the day, they're doing that because of like the group harmony or the kapwa and all that stuff. But yes, you're right. Like, where's the boundary in that? Like, especially if you're getting medical stuff.
Yeah, it's like, Mom, I'll just buy it for you. Like you're not supposed to take things out of the ER room. So, Dr. Nette, what are your strategies for mastering healthy boundaries for Filipinos? We know that you offer a free masterclass on healthy boundaries in your Linktree, and that you also offer a course on this topic. Tell us more about your masterclass and the course, and what people can expect if they sign up for it.
Yeah, so the master class for right now is free from the time of our recording. Yeah, some people are like, you should at least sell this because this is like even the free master class is a lot of good information. Why are you giving this for free? But so yeah, in the master class there are some strategies, but like when they go to the actual course, it's a lot more, it's a deeper dive into kind of like the like I one of the core like portions of the course is like on understanding what's preventing you, which is like understanding like your own thoughts, right? So I kind of like talk about a little bit Western psychology, Cheryl, like the CBT part of it, like what are your cognitive distortions when it comes to boundaries and all that stuff. And I give them a beautiful, beautiful workbook, by the way, which my daughter helped me make. I'm sorry, but
Oh,
it's really,
nice.
it's awesome. It's a really awesome, it's aesthetically like pleasing and oh my gosh, like anyway,
Aw.
it's a beautiful workbook that she helped me curate and all of this stuff are there. And then I give like a script on how to kind of do that. There's like an actual script that you have to follow. And some of the parts of the script is kind of like what I talked about, you know, like you have to understand that, you know, you don't do kind of like the very direct confrontational. I also shared in our Instagram page the differences of communication between Western and Filipino. It's like very indirect, very informal, right? Very lambing. Malambing tayong mga Pilipino eh. So the tone of voice is really good. So instead of saying, Mom, I told you like on Saturday we have this date with our friends, la la la. It's like, Mom, like remember, like on Saturday, you know, we're gonna have like this friends at our date, so we're gonna have to like reschedule with you, but you also miss you and all that stuff. So, and then also mentioning the word either mom or dad instead of just like addressing. And my kid does this sometimes, and I have to remind her. I said, Maya, like you have to remember, like I'm mom, I'm not your friend. She talks to me sometimes like I'm her barkada, right? Like her one of her friends. And I'm like, can you fix again the tone of voice? And so, you know, like mentioning kind of like, and I would tell her like, you know, like if you say mom, like, can I do this or whatever? Or like when we will have a conversation, I said that I really appreciate that because like, even, or like even I, like with both of you, I always say Cheryl or Sheena, like our first names are like the sweetest names out of all the names in the world. So kind of like use the things that we already know. And those are like very Filipino. It's all about revolving again, like the kapwa and all that stuff. And then also not arguing. So basically, we have this thing called the disarming technique and kind of like finding some truth in what they're saying. That you're right, mom. You know, like I haven't been spending time with you and I miss you too. Instead of saying, Mom, I'm also working and I have a family and well, like, right? Yeah, so kind of like going that mom, yeah, I do miss you. I haven't seen you in a long time. You're right. Like, you know, my kid also hasn't seen you and she misses you too. So yeah, we should spend time together. So kind of like finding some truth, you know, like empathizing with them. So those are there's like a whole script that I put in the course. And those are
Wow.
some of the healthy boundaries. Yeah, that's what it is. Like just really communicating and empathizing and putting the respect, but also at the end of the script, like you're also going to be able to say that, Mom, you know, I actually like made plans with our friends, and that's your boundary, right? And I also kind of like spending time with them. It's also like an important relationship in my life, but obviously, like my important with you is more important. But I still want to spend some time with my friends too. And so you're able to also kind of share what you know what you're feeling and what your limitations are. So it's like both sides, yeah, are gonna win.
And for those that don't speak Tagalog fluently, lambing is a kind of like sweet talk, talking to someone sweetly and very gently.
Sheena, I saw some reactions as Dr. Nette was sharing.
So it's funny because my background is I come from the corporate entertainment background. On the ad sales and marketing side. And a lot of what I did for nearly 2 decades was negotiating deals, right? And a lot of the feedback that I got from my bosses in the years is like, you have a very nice way or like almost a sweet way of like negotiating things and delivering bad news in a good way or delivering something in a very easy way. And I don't think it ever made sense on where that came from until you just said lambing. I'm like, yes, of course I was good at that because I grew up having to do that to kind of negotiate my way in my family, you know?
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
That's
come
so
full
true.
circle.
Yeah.
I
So yeah,
love
a
the
lot of
sweetness.
negotiating, yeah, and compromise. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I visualize it as like the honey, right? Like bringing the sweetness into the communication. Yeah.
It's the idea of you attract more bees with honey than
Right.
what is that?
You do.
That's
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My dad probably would also say it's also how you court.
Mm-hmm.
Now Dr. Ned, I want to now dive into the guilt. Because that comes with boundaries, right? I have experienced personally exerting boundaries, but without airing my dirty laundry and all the gory details. I've practiced, exerting boundaries. And I found that within that comes guilt, like from maybe family members or, even within the community, even if it's subconscious, right? Or, people are not aware, but I still get it where, like, well, that's your family member, or that person might be like a parent or like a sibling or why would you like cut off or have you talked to them yet or and then it's kind of this passive aggressive like guilt for trying to maintain or exert the practice of applying boundaries, right? So I'm just, we can come up with so many ways where that might have been sourced from, but I'm curious to know where else do you think this guilt is stemming from? Because we talked earlier about cultural values and, how can, as a community, when it comes to applying boundaries, how can we work through that guilt to establish healthy boundaries, maybe towards toxicity that we might be experiencing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so interesting. So the guilt, because a lot of us are predominantly Catholic, um, that's a lot of it, right? And also like the colonial mentality. Um, I I don't know actually like how our I mean I have an idea on how because I lived to see my great grandparents and I
Oh
saw
wow.
how yeah I think they passed away when I was like 8 years old. And like they would literally use words like in Spanish like jabon, kunin mo sa kubiertos, ay kunin mo yung kubierto sa lamesa, sa
Uh-huh.
silya, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Jabon, they would even say sabon like instead of soap, jabon,
Uh-huh.
right? So a lot of like the things and oh, the I can feel my dad saying don't air out dirty laundry. Okay, this is not dirty laundry, but this is just like my observation. Like a lot of the kind of like the superiority because like they're like my great grandparents during their time are kind of well to do, so they had like a lot of like maids and like and all that stuff. And sometimes the way they talk to the maids, they're kind of like very like, oh, kunin mo to, or like they have that kind of certain tone of voice. And then when I started seeing some of the movies, and I'm like, that's where it came from. The Spaniards talk to the Filipinos like that, to the Indios like that, right? So I mean, like we are just like I don't know if it's. I know that like Dr. Lenny Strobel's generation are starting to do it, but boy, like we have a lot of unraveling to do. Right, because it's like it's not even conscious. I mean, unless like you and I, Cheryl, kind of put it on social media, a lot of like, my gosh, like that's where it was coming from. Like, you don't know how many DMs I get every day, Cheryl, saying that that's I couldn't put the words to that, and you just spoke to that. That's where it was coming from
Hmm.
because it's so ingrained in us. Like a lot of like the things that we do from sunset or like from sunrise to sundown are like in the cloak of colonial mentality. When I would put my foundation because I want to be like maybe like a little paler or whatever, that's like colonial
Mm-hmm.
mentality. When I would want to look a little bit less Filipino and contour my nose and contour my cheeks, that's colonial mentality. Right. So it's like seeped in our DNA, unfortunately. And there's even studies that says that for us to kind of unravel this trauma, like I think it goes 13 lineage. Like I know that some says 4 or 3, but boy, in our bones unless like we do this,
Yeah.
unless we talk about it every day. I mean, like I do this work, Cheryl, almost on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis, Monday to Friday. I put out stuff on the decolonization. But when I get to work, do you think I think about that's colonial mentality. I'm eating McDonald's, although I don't eat McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? Like the things that I
Mm-hmm,
do
mm-hmm.
are kind of like that's just what it is. A lot of it are like within that thread.
Mm-hmm.
The religious influence, the utang na loob. So I mean, like, no wonder a lot of us, like when my Filipino clients would come to me, I have this guilt. Oh, all right, this
Mm-hmm.
is gonna be a good session. Let's go. Tell me,
Yeah.
tell me
Yeah.
about yourself. Well, my mom did this, and then she told me when I was la 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 la, and walang utang na loob. I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
So how can we, what are your strategies? I mean, without, I mean, I know that like you have courses, but what are some of the gems maybe that you can share with us to work around some of that that's getting maybe, yeah,
So are you asking me like
dished
because
out?
like guilt is kind of getting in the way? That's why it's hard to do the boundaries. Is that the question? I don't know if
I,
I'm getting
I
it right.
mean, yeah, so maybe it's both, right? Like sometimes in the initial part of launching the boundaries or initiating boundaries, there's already guilt that creeps into our head is like, how am I, and sometimes anxiety, right? How am I going to initiate this healthy boundary with my let's just say my mom or my auntie, right? Or my tita without starting up an argument or without making it a painful process. That's one, right? Boundary. And then the second is, how do I maintain these boundaries without other people in my family or my friends saying like, but that's your mom, right? You know that she raised you, right? So I know right now you're going through this not talking to her, but she's still your mom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So right,
Okay.
there's kind of two stages, right?
Wow. So the way I'm gonna answer that is like maybe through I'll share you a personal story if that's okay, because this is how I did it with my own mom. Um, um, because of my healing journey, like and her own healing journey too. It's both ways, right? Like we are a so much better place. My gosh, like the way we communicate, it's like if you saw us how we bicker when I was growing up, it's like that from that. That's amazing. So like we're in a good
Yeah.
place. But one of the reasons and why I'm able to communicate like freely now and I don't have as much guilt. I still do have the guilt because I want to help them. Like I want to be able to give them the life that I think that they deserve within my capacity, right? I think that's always kind of like gonna be there, that tinge of guilt because of the kapwa. And we just want to kind of give our family everything that they need, right? But I think that when I started doing the healthy boundary with her, and I use the scripts and all that stuff. By the way, my family, like my husband knows the script, my daughter knows the script. We use it in each other, and it's still very effective. Even though it's one that we're using it in each other. But I think like for me at the back of my mind is like, do you want to go back to how the way things are and just being passive aggressive and or not talking? That's the alternative. You either become passive
Hmm.
aggressive in front of your relatives or you don't talk. You cut them off for a few months, which I've done. Like I haven't spoke with her. There was a time for 2 months because she got mad at me for what was it? I forgot, like some trivial, like
Yeah.
consequential thing. And I'm like, huh, I don't know
Yes.
what thought. Like I didn't speak to her for 2 months. And of course that guilt set in. And then once I
Hmm.
learned how to kind of like do the healthy boundary and communicate with her, for some reason, just like that Filipino client that I don't think that I continued the story earlier,
Mm.
they responded. And they actually are like, oh, anak, like, so you want to do this? Like, I'm available tomorrow. I was just like in a hurry yesterday because I had to bring your grandma to the beach house or la la la. Because I told her what it was for me in a very respectful way. I communicated with
Mm.
her. I mean, she can't read my mind because the story was like she was basically saying that, oh, you guys go to sleep. And, they live in the Philippines and I'm here. So my daughter and I were trying to call them on a weekend. But apparently it was not a good time for her because she was going to bring my grandma, who's 97 years old, by the way. to the beach and all, which is also 5 minutes away from where we live in Marinduque. And
Mm-hmm.
she was kind of in a hurry, and I got hurt. I was like, oh, like, I haven't spoken to you all week, and you're like kind of like in a hurry and just rushing us to go to bed because of the time difference. And so what I
Yes.
did was like I did and you can also text it, by the way. I texted her this whole thing about like, Ma, we really miss you, and like, I said, like, when you were kind of like doing that, it seems like you did it on a tough, like, in a kind of like very nice way, right? And then she responded like in a very mature adult way, which is very surprising to me. I was like, wow. So she's getting it and she's respecting what I'm telling her. And then her comeback was like, oh, Anak, like, why don't we set a time that's convenient for both of us in talking? Like, tomorrow I'm available and all that stuff. Because, like, if you
Oh,
see, it's
interesting.
typically in the movies, right? Away na yan, right, Sheena? Like, it's gonna, you're gonna explode because, like, it's like you're keeping it all inside you for the longest time. And all the past hurts are gonna come back and all of this stuff. And then it becomes this big away. And then we could become passive aggressive, or we cut them off and then we don't talk for 2 months to 1 year just because you don't have the skills to communicate with each other that way. Like, that's such a disservice to our community when there is a way, there is a healthy way to be able to honor both sides.
I think that's why the work that you're doing is so important, because you're actually like giving this language, giving it like, the words to use, because like you said, we didn't have that for a long time. So I did the whole don't speak for X amount of time or passive aggressive. So, the things you put out on Instagram, just giving it words and language to use is like super helpful.
Yeah. And by the way, that Filipino client, do you know their relationship now, her relationship with their mom? Because it's like this. Whenever she goes and visit her mom, oh, Anak, thank you for spending time with us. We know that you're really busy. We know that you're busy with your fiancé and all that stuff, but we really appreciate you coming over. And she was like, that's my mom. Like, that's how she's communicating now with me. And it's still now, that's their relationship after she kind of created that healthy boundary and communicated with her mom that way.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
So it really lies then, I guess, with your strategies in the delivery of the communication.
Mhm. Yeah.
Interesting. And then if there is a like cutoff, right, that's happening, do you have any like thoughts on how to respond to maybe external guilt from family that are like, you only have one mom, or
Yeah. Oh, I've
you
had that
know,
happen with a family
yeah,
member.
so what is yeah, so what is maybe like your insider strategies around dealing with the external
Mm-hmm.
comments and
Yeah.
feedback?
Yeah. So I think that all of us are like in our own different paths in our healing journey. Because, like, even to be honest with you, that script that I said, you're only going to be able to do that if you let your ego die. If you're not at a place where you're willing to hear what's right, or like have some sort of empathy, because you can't use the script if you don't have the empathy, if you're not going to be able to kind of like give some sort of compliment to your parent, like a genuine compliment, you're not going to be able to use the script. You have to be at a place where you're like, okay, I think I'm ready. Because, like, if you're in your fight flight mode, you're just going to freeze in the middle of the conversation and it's not going to go well.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to be at a place where you're like, okay, I'm doing the work, right? I'm on my healing journey, maybe talking to a therapist, maybe doing your soul searching, ayahuasca, like whatever, shaman healing, whatever healing you're in. When you're ready, then you can do that. It's easier. I'm not saying that if you're not in that journey, you can't, because I've had clients who are definitely still kind of like at the beginning and they use the script and they are still able to do it. But it's much easier if you're kind of far along.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
So this is Sheena coming back in. Dr. Nette, on that note, I know that we probably have some folks in our community who would love to dig in even deeper with your teachings. So I have a couple of follow-up questions to help our community learn more. First is, do you offer private sessions, therapy sessions? And if you
Yeah.
do, does that include individual or couples versus group?
Yeah. So I have like a few iterations for this. So I have a private practice here in Florida. Fortunately, because I'm part of the Psych Act, I can offer it to 42 other states now in the US. Um, and so a lot of like Filipinos from all over the US come. And the interesting thing is because of this growth in the social media, like half of the population there are not from the US. Like I think, oh, Ash, hold on. I know the insights because my assistant shared it with me. She's like 60% are from the US. And then the rest are from like outside the US. Like there we have people from Australia, Canada, the UK, from the Philippines. And those folks, they can avail of like I have like a coaching program or a coaching package that they can avail together with, and then they get the course for free. But the master class is for free for right now from this recording.
Very That's very cool. And it actually answers my second question, which was, can these sessions be accessed virtually? Which sounds like
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm. Yes. And then
Amazing.
on the website too, Sheena, there's also a lot of free stuff that we give, um, because I know that there's a lot of our community members that maybe who cannot afford. And like my dream, to be honest with you, in the future is like, I was like just talking to Cheryl about like maybe some grants and all that stuff to be able to offer some scholarship because like I want to share it with our community for sure. And a lot of like the things like if they follow here, some of the things that we talked about, if they follow that, I'll be surprised if they don't, if they don't find success in what we kind of just like talked about in here.
And for the ones who want to dig in deeper with sessions, do you take insurance?
So for Florida residents, I do. There's only like a couple that I take, but for the one it's all this insurance thing. Like for the outside of the state of Florida, I'm not able to. I ask because I'm like through Headway and Alma, but they're like, oh no, we can't do that. Yeah, so it's private pay for the rest.
That's good to know. And do you have any speaking engagements coming up this summer that we can tell our community about?
Yeah, so like I am deep in the so my calendar, like Cheryl knows this because like when she tried to call me, like, oh my God, like she's like not available until October. Um and I'm and because like we're gonna put this for next year, right? Like there are some speaking engagements for sure, but like Sheena, like there's some negotiation sometimes, like when it comes to these things, because some of them want to fly me over, like for instance in Seattle and all that stuff, and I'm like, well, that's when my daughter is on spring break, eh, and all that stuff. But yeah, there's some stuff in the works, but all of those things, like we put it on our social media if I'm ever gonna be in that area. And then there's also some people, by the way, in like Canada and Australia was like, please come and talk over here. So there might be some things, but yeah, there.
Wow.
That sounds
Mhm.
so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, take
apparently
us with you.
If you want us to
no.
interview in person,
That's apparently what social media does. I didn't even know when I started this fashion project. But I mean, like, yeah, by the time of this recording, hopefully, like, our YouTube also will have like more subscribers, so they can also avail of all of the different strategies because I share a lot. I share a lot of like this on the YouTube. We're back to like doing long form YouTube videos too. Yeah, we stopped recording for a while, but we're back to recording for long form. Yeah.
that's great. So it sounds like more online courses and master classes are coming up soon, hopefully.
Yeah, and there's also like I keep on forgetting about this because we're gonna launch it soon. Like, but there's also the Hilom Collective, which is like basically the collective healing membership. That actually, like, I didn't instigate it. The people in Instagram, the followers, they're like, Do you have a membership?" I'm like, "That's a great idea. I didn't even think about that." So I mean, Cheryl and Sheena, I'm sure that we're gonna invite you in one of the workshops to kind of help us go facilitate. Because
Yeah,
I'm
we'd love
recruiting a lot of
to.
like our mental health experts to kind of like share
Hmm.
their expertise too in the workshop. And these are like Filipinos really from all over the world. And I think that that's what really makes, um, what do you call this? Like the work and in social media so what do you call that? Like so rewarding for me is because we're able to kind of create almost a sacred space where a lot of like Filipinos from all corners of the world can come together. And we're bound like by the shared history. And like really a lot of us are just like really longing for community and healing. So it's gonna be a really very special collective healing community. Yeah.
That's so cool. We're excited to hear more about it and be on it if you'll have us.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Sure.
Yeah.
And are there any other topics within Filipino mental health that you foresee yourself covering next outside of what you already covered? Anything that's excites you coming up?
Yeah. I mean, like decolonization is big because there's so many branches to it. I mean, like even decolonizing our body from how we were almost kind of taken out from our land and our relationship like with Mother Earth and how a lot of like diasporic Filipinos were, like brought to different lands because of we don't have enough resources or jobs in the Philippines, right? So kind of
Yes.
like how do you heal being physically kind of like separated like that from our
Mm.
motherland? I mean, there's a whole branch of decolonization and indigenous psychology that I do want to go to later on. But I'm also bringing in other mental health experts like you guys in those talks, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's really coincidental that you just brought that up because in our November episode, we had interviewed both a death midwife and a death doula. And part of what surfaced in the conversation of, excuse me, is of in grief and loss was actually the loss of the homeland
Yeah.
and the loss and the disconnect and the loss of the language in entering like in that diasporic experience, right?
Oh, yeah.
In
Yeah.
having to like, and I mean, I saw that with my own parents when they immigrated to the US. Like, you're coming into a country to acquire opportunities and afford them for your family, but at the same time, at what do you have to let go of or relinquish in that process? Sometimes, I grew up unfortunately not speaking like Tagalog or Bisaya because one of the things that was told to me was that, oh, we didn't want you to have an accent, or we didn't want you to be made fun of for your accent, or we didn't think that you needed to apply or use a language here in the US. So that's why we didn't teach it to you, But with that, you're just losing a whole like segment of that culture. And even like in the migration experience, having to like evenly the separation of families, leaving family, land, that you were used to growing up with, and not having that, around you, it brings up so much.
Missing major
So
milestones, like my cousin's graduation and my grandma's 90th birthday, she's 97 now, like my dad's 70th birthday. Yeah, wedding anniversaries. There's a lot. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, before we started recording, you were talking about also being crying when you were reestablish yourself next to the ocean. Just even like being by that body of water that like heals so much of us. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, because
you
if you
sounds
think
like you have a wealth of topics to talk about within this realm.
yeah, because if you think about it, if you're in the body of ocean, like is there really separation then from the Philippines to us? Like we're all connected. Like if you go underneath, it's all land. Like we're all connected. And so I think that for me, like when I'm near the ocean, it's like, yeah, my home's just there. Even though I'm kind of on the other side, I'm not in the Pacific. I'm on the Atlantic
Yeah,
side here. But still,
yeah,
it's like that
yeah.
kind of connection to like my homeland, to my ancestors, to my parents, because I can't visit them whenever I want to, right? To my family, or still a lot of them are all there. Yeah, it's like for me it's like really coming home when I'm near the ocean. That's why I shared with you, Cheryl, that when we moved to Texas, it's like we were in the DFW kind of side, so far from the ocean. I really felt like my soul, like I felt like I was so depleted, like I was not in my mojo at all, like I was not creative. yeah, so depleting. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can't wait to like continue this journey within the realm of health and wellness and continue to peel the mango with you. Continue to get at the core of what's like really for years like has been affecting our community like intergenerationally and also in solidarity I want to say with other communities that have experienced trauma because we find that when we dive into right our own healing that it also alongside allows others to find inspiration to heal themselves. So we can't wait for you to reveal some of the topics that you're going to address because we're also like steadily following Dr. Ned and seeing what is she going to talk about next.
Yeah. Like I shared with you, a lot of those topics are either from like my own clients or like the
Mhm.
people, just like the contents like being shared. Like there's so many, sometimes hundreds of comments. I'm really surprised. And we get inspiration from that. Like, what's the theme that's coming out of this? And that's what the community needs to kind of heal from, or like at least unfurl, right? I like the word unfurl.
Yeah. And the people there that are there to hold space when that happens. I mean that's what
And
Kapwa
it's so
is, right?
supportive, Cheryl. That's what surprises to me, because I know that for me, like my whole
Mm.
notion, I mean, I know that social media can be toxic, but at least the
Yes.
community that we're building, like within those
Yes.
spaces, they're like, oh, my mom did this to me. And then someone would chime in, like, I'm so sorry I had to go through that. And this is what I did in my whole. They're so supportive of each other. I was like, this is what collective healing is all about. We just need to make it live by doing the membership and like putting everybody in a Zoom call and kind of giving support, because that alone is like understanding that you are not alone. And that's the messages that I kind of get all the time, Cheryl and Sheena. It's like, Dr. Ned, like I thought I was the only one who cut off my parents, but apparently there's millions of views. That's one of the reasons I apparently like my social media went what do you call it, viral, because like there's now a million something views for that video that was dedicated for someone in my family who cut off a family member. And I was just normalizing that, there are some times and instances that where we have to cut off when it's so abusive, because
Mhm.
it's not good for you. Yeah.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that is the decolonizing process though, right? Because I think when we look at like our colonial history, we were taught unfortunately part of the trauma is to fight against each other, right? The crab
Mm-hmm.
mentality to bring each
Yeah.
other down. And so
Right.
within the realm of health and wellness, I think we have to learn how to coexist in this healing process. I mean, that's what for us, that's what motivated us to partner with organizations like such as Therapy Now, or for even to bring you on the podcast, because we have to acknowledge that we one person or one team cannot do all of this
Yep.
work
Mm-hmm.
alone,
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
we're only like most effective if we work in partnership and with each other as a
Oh yeah.
community. So
Mm-hmm.
we're
Yep.
so
That's why
fortunate to have you here.
I know. That's why, and I mean, like, I think that when I don't know if we still have time, like when I graduated
Yeah.
from grad school, because I was kind of like, there's also that feeling, right? Especially when you're an immigrant who just came to America, that this is part of the colonial mentality that if you're born here, then you're more superior than the people, like, than first gen Filipinos. And I was kind of like in that belief at that time, right? Not knowing on what the beautiful magic that can be done when you're together with the community. And at that time, I was also already seeing like the works of Dr. Kevin Nadal, EGR
Mm-hmm.
David, and I could have like reached out to them at that time, but I didn't, because I'm like, who's this immigrant? Kind of like reaching out. Fine, she graduated with a clinical psychology, but who is she? But that's kind of like my own work that I needed to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that I'm in this space and I'm kind of, connecting like with Cynthia Sadat and all the other Gregory, the still
Mm-hmm.
here though is like I think it's like the current DOFA president right now, Christine Melandris, and all of the different
Yeah.
Cheryl and Sheena, in this group.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a little, it becomes, because it can feel so heavy. Like you said, like you can't do the work on your own, but when you are standing on the shoulders of other amazing Filipino healers, my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
that's when the magic happens.
And it becomes more impactful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Oof. Okay. This is like a therapy session. So for those for those of you that have been listening, this is Cheryl that's been speaking. And I just wanted to say, like, as we reach our closing for this episode, we are a health and wellness podcast. And so part of what we bring in is asking our guests, what are your health and wellness routines? Because there's so much that we balance, right? With our jobs, our day jobs, our passion projects. So what we wanted to ask you, Dr. Nette, what are your, how do you yourself apply healthy boundaries? What are your self-care practices and health wellness routines that you would like to share?
And as you know, Cheryl, healthy boundaries is a constant work. So it's something that we have to do even with ourselves.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Ourselves. But I don't know
Yes.
if you guys know that I'm a cancer survivor. So health is super a priority for me. So like this coming November, because like we're filming in 2024, is going to be my fifth year cancer free. And that's going to continue.
Oh, yay.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so like the gym, like I go to Orange Theory. That's kind of like really my big distressor. I also have like a walking pad here. So sometimes like when I de-stress, I have like my podcast and the thing, or like maybe like a kind of like Netflix that I want to binge or something. I put it on, but I'm walking as I do it. And then we live at the beach. So you're gonna see me at the beach a lot of the times on my downtime, and then I cook for my family. I also I do all kinds of like stuff. One of my white clients said that like because she does this too, and then her husband told her that, wow, like that's how white women take care of themselves. But no, but the truth is, like, I do acupuncture, and I also do like I get my massage for my massage therapist, who's really amazing. So it's really if I don't do that, it's so easy to burn out in this field. So easy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I spend a lot of time with my family. They're my inspiration.
No. Now, as we begin to close, how can our community contact you, Dr. Nette, if they have additional questions stemming from this particular episode or would like to learn more about your offerings?
Yeah, so I have a social media presence. So the Brown Psych. So and then the color brown, and then Psych, which is short for psychologist, PSYCH. That's the Instagram handle. And I also have a website, which also we're currently updating, but it's live, thebrownspsych.com. All the offerings are there. There's a lot of free stuff there. There's even also a pre-colonial ebook there that's for free that my daughter also helped me make. It's so beautiful. I wish I can show it. Oh, I don't have my phone. It's so beautiful. So my daughter is kind of like in the creative kind of, she wants to be an animator. So she knows all this digital kind of like platforms. It's so beautiful. Sorry, plug for the all the free stuff. But it's there. And then if they want to reach me for counseling, so the Brown Psych is different from the counseling, my website is www.calmmindcenter.com.
Okay.
Cool. And this is Sheena coming back in. So final words, Dr. Nette. Is there anything else that you would want our community to know when it comes to mastering healthy boundaries for Filipinos?
Yes, I think that there's a couple that I wanted to share, that when you're doing healthy boundaries, you're actually like doing it for the Kapwa. At the end of the day, it's not really for you. Because like, for instance, like if I just cut off my mom, then that's it. That's the end of our relationship, right? That because I did that healthy boundary with her, I'm able to also kind of continue that relationship with her. So it's still all about the Kapwa, because a lot of people would say that, oh, when you're doing your boundaries, like you're not respecting the Kapwa. It's not. That's what rigid boundaries will do, right? But like we're talking about healthy boundaries here. And at the end of the day, if you on your own, like I always kind of like when I think about the Kapwa, I always think about like this chain, right? If like you're one of the important links, like we are one of the important links in that community. If you're weak and if you're so depleted, if you're like not as like you're not speaking your truth, not being authentic in your relationship, which is like a core thing when it comes to healthy boundaries, like you're gonna falter. That link is gonna corrode. Yeah, we're not gonna be a healthy, like we need you in that chain. And so that's why I always say that, mental wellness cannot exist without healthy boundaries.
That makes sense because you can't take care of other people until you take care of yourself first. So, no, this is such a rich dialogue, and it was just really an introduction to the vast wealth of topics to cover when it comes to decolonizing and destigmatizing mental health within our community. So, we are so appreciative of you being here, and our community really does benefit from your teachings. We're so looking forward to witnessing your journey, this new collective that we can't wait to see, and the engaging content that you have on Instagram. And we'll definitely continue helping share your upcoming opportunities, and would love to invite you back to discuss more in the future.
Yeah. Of course, I would be happy to be back here and be in community with you guys. Like I feel like Cheryl said, like I just like feel like I'm in a group therapy session. Like
Yeah, I love this. You're welcome back anytime when it aligns schedule with our schedule.
too. We're gonna be in the Hilom Collective and also in the podcast, right? Yeah. In our
Yes.
psyche too. Yes.
We would love that. We would love that.
Yep.
And to our community, for our next episode, we will be talking with Sky Cubacub, owner and designer of Rebirth Garments, a clothing brand that consists of gender-affirming clothing for queer, trans, disabled folks of all sizes and ages, because access in fashion contributes to wellness too. Stay tuned as our Radical Visibility episode will air on Wellness Wednesday, June 11th for Pride Month. As we close, we'd like to acknowledge once again our guest speaker, Dr. Nette, our creative lead, Richie, our video editor, Harmony Tangonan, our social media strategist and development coordinator, Kathleen Torrio, our outreach manager, Maya Custodio, our advisors, Alison De La Cruz, Rian de los Reyes, and Safo Teologo, our community partners, SoCal Filipinos, This Filipino American Life, Rising Filipinas, Therapy Nye, and all of our community members for your shares and support. As always, we'll share more about our guest offerings on our Instagram stories and highlights for permanent access with any of their upcoming events. Be sure to follow us at Pilipinx in Wellness on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Don't forget to continue to hit like and subscribe on our Pilipinx in Wellness YouTube channel. Thank you always for believing in us. Be well, everyone. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other.
Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Cheryl and Sheena, and more power to you both and to Pilipinx Wellness. Maraming salamat.
Madamong gid nga salamat.